Welcome back, everybody, to the Move Me Brightly podcast. Happy 2024. This is Tom here, as always, with my co-host Blaine. Hi, Blaine.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Just, thriving.
You're in bed.
Well, I had some technical difficulties, which are it's very, very cold here in Atlanta. And my office is downstairs surrounded by windows, meaning it's very, very cold. So I had a technical difficulty that meant I needed to be upstairs where it's warm.
Technical difficulty was just it's too cold for you to be in there.
You understand.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
I would never feel that personally. I love the cold. I embrace it. It's my element, but we're
Okay.
different.
Atlanta, though, it's like a wet cold. So even Jimmy grew up in Connecticut and then lived in Jackson Hole and Denver, called me yesterday 3 times from work to tell me he was cold. It gets cold.
Wait,
It's like
he called you 3 times just to say I'm cold.
I'm cold. I'm so cold. So cold.
Did he expect you to do, and we'll get to our guest in a second, but I want to know, did he call you because he wanted you to do something about it?
I think he just wanted to tell me that it was cold, which
That's sweet.
but I'm living here. I mean, I'm out and about. I understand that it's cold. I didn't feel the need to call him 3 times because duh.
I mean, you have different love languages,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
He called you from work, right? You both weren't in the same house.
Right.
Like he wasn't calling you from downstairs.
Right. Work, the car, anytime he was exposed to the elements.
I mean, at least he's thinking about you,
Sure. Yeah.
you know? Not calling some chick on the side that he's cold. That would be worse.
I mean, if he wanted to call a chick on the side to tell her he's cold, sure. She can field that call.
Make it easier for you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a great guest. Alex Winkler is here with us. He's a very talented film composer and a personal friend of mine. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hey guys, glad to be on. I've been listening to your guys' stuff for a couple months now, and good to see you guys.
Hey, always nice to meet a fan.
Thank
Oh
you
yeah.
so much. Thank you.
How are you doing temperature wise?
Oh, I'm great. I mean, I was born in Detroit, so I knew the cold, and then mostly raised in Houston, so I know the heat. I'm
Hmm.
basically built for any kind of weather.
Do you find this because you live in LA like me, and we've been going through a bit of a cold spell by
Oh yeah.
LA standards at least. Nights in the low 40s, day around like 58, 60. Do you consider this cold?
Yeah. If you don't have the heat going, it's pretty dang cold. And my partner, who you know, Liz, she refuses to put the heat on. So I've been living with that for a few weeks now, just like feeling like I'm freezing my ass off over here.
Liz and I would make very compatible roommates because I don't think I've lived in LA now for 10 years. I think in those 10 years, I've turned on the heat where I've lived twice in 10 years.
Well, I'll be comfortable if you have to text her to tell you that you're cold. If she's your outsource, just it's like in Atlanta. You're welcome to always text her.
But wouldn't she just say, like, suck it up?
Yeah,
Suck.
she would have no sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no sympathy at all.
I think that, and then I think the 2 times I turned the heat on were because I had been out like working or something and it was like cold and wet. So I came home wet
There you go.
and I was like, I need to heat up. Otherwise, I'm going to get sick. But I actually, during this cold stretch, there was one day where one of my cats just ripped like the nastiest fart in the world. And it stunk up. I live in like a loft condo, so there are no doors. It's just like one big room, and it just stunk up the entire place for minutes. And so I cracked a window open to let it out and then shut the window. And for the next like 4 days, because I refused to turn the heat on, my house was not above 60 degrees for like 4 days straight. And I was like, it is really cold in here, but I refused to turn the heat on. I'm like, it'll reorient itself. It's fine. Eventually it'll be okay. And it was, but it was a chilly few days.
Yeah, we got a tough out here.
Cool story, I know. So Alex,
Yes.
the idea behind this podcast is we want to bring on creative people who work in creative fields. Obviously, you're a film composer, and a really talented one at that. What was your journey like? Start whenever you want, but were you interested in music at a really young age? Is this something you always knew you wanted to do? Did you start with ideas of being like a touring jazz musician and you kind of fell into the film side? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, no, I was a late bloomer to all this. A lot of piano players, they get introduced to the instrument when they're 3, 4, 5 years old. And I was always jealous of that because I never was introduced to it until I was 12. Which some people just, they think you'll never be very good. And at a certain point, that is what made me choose writing music over performing, because I couldn't really compete with classical pianists or even jazz pianists that have been playing since they were 9. And getting all that classical repertoire early, building their technique, you sort of, I don't know if you feel this way, but some people are just so good at what they do, it literally just intimidates you out of even trying, right? So seeing these great piano players, I was like, I need to find another way through music. I can't really just be a performer only, or else I'll be outcompeted. So it just forced me to, start a band and, songwriting and composition. And so I just started experimenting all throughout high school with different forms of that, and ended up going to school for classical music, like not just performing, but mostly writing classical music at University of Houston. And that gave me the fundamentals to try a lot of different things, but I was still like not really finding my way. I ended up writing like a full-length musical. It was it wasn't the greatest, but you learn a lot of lessons out of those early experiences, and you kind of see like what you like and what you really don't like. And so the first time I scored a student short film, everything just seemed different, right? I tried all these different paths, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, this is so cool not to be the only thing. Because in classical music, the music is the king. It's not servicing any other thing. And being a part of a film, it made me realize like I was more excited to be a part of a film than just to be the main event in a concert. So that got me really hungry to meet a lot of different people. And Houston didn't really have a whole lot of talented filmmakers. So that's what led me out to LA, is just trying to meet a bunch of people. I mean, honestly, like you, that are really serious about what they're doing, and they've pursued their dreams to come out to LA. So that led me to the USC program for film scoring, where I met a lot of people, and yeah, just been doing freelance scoring ever since.
And USC is where you met your partner, Liz, right?
Yes, yeah.
Who's a very talented writer.
Yep, scored her first film, and I probably met like 3 or 4 people that I'm good friends with to this day at USC, and it's been just really friends of friends recommending me to other people that have gotten me to where I am. And all the little stops along the way, like doing the musicals and doing jazz music as a professional jazz pianist back in Houston, like all those things eventually helped me in doing what I'm doing, but it felt very like a long and winding road.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. The keeping the few close relationships that you meet in school um within your industry is definitely something I can relate to. And also having that kind of that background not specifically related to what you're doing now come and play to help you. I think that's something I can relate to as well, because the film school I went to taught you how to work every department on a set. And so now as a producer, I have that familiarity with like the G&E team, with the makeup artists, with the wardrobe people, with the sound mixer,
Right.
to have that not necessarily like I know what they're doing. Certainly cannot do what they do better than they can at all, but I can at least speak the language a little bit. And I think that's something that ultimately helped me as a producer to know what all those different elements are that go into making a movie. So I think having that kind of miscellaneous background experience, I think, are where a lot of the people that I've come across like you who really excel at what they're doing. I think that's definitely a good path to go down, instead of just laser focusing on this one thing and only really knowing how to do this one thing. I think that ends up being really limiting. Yes, Blaine, question for Blaine.
When does the score happen?
Great
in
question. Like in the filmmaker's lifespan, right? Like within the film's lifespan, yeah. This can be way different for different projects. Like I've done films where I write music before they ever shoot it. So in a way, I'm like the first person after the producer to get a chance to do my work. Um, but mostly it's when they have close to a picture lock. Like so that's actually quite far along. And that can suck sometimes because you're kind of just dragged into this film and you haven't learned what the story is. You have to immediately go right into it. And in movies like that, it takes a lot of legwork at the beginning to sort of write music that helps you understand the story, right? Because if you write something that's just not working, you're not really sure why right away. You have to assess that. And in assessing why things don't work, you actually learn what the story is and what it isn't. So unfortunately, most of the time, you don't get to know the script early on. But at the same point, I like having like these intense deadlines that just make you sprint to the finish line. Um, the film I did, most recently, it's going to be in theaters next month. That one I had 2 weeks to do it, and so it was literally 2 weeks until their South by Southwest deadline. I had to write an entire feature film score. So it's like those experiences are sometimes the most fun because it's almost impossible and you just have to like trust your gut and go.
Yeah, I know with Alex and I have worked together a few times. The first time we worked together was on Witch Please, I believe, which was
Yeah.
2.5 years ago. And that was a process where you came on relatively late. I don't think we were totally picture locked, but obviously the director had you in mind. And it wasn't until we finished shooting the project that Alex really started doing his thing. We did another project, Fishmonger, where you wrote a song. There was like a musical
Yeah.
sequence in the movie. And Alex wrote that musical piece. And so for that project, you were involved before we started shooting because that was
Mhm.
something the actors actually had to know and sing along to on the production day. So in that, you worked in collaboration with Neil, the director, before production even started to really hammer home that song, what the lyrics were, recorded it with the actors in advance and all that stuff so they could basically lip sync it along on production day. They do a thing called the playback, Blaine, where if you already have a finished piece of music that you know is going to be in the material and needs to be timed with the song itself, they'll actually play back the audio on set and the actors will basically fake it like a music
Like,
video.
I'm just Ken.
Like what?
I'm just Ken.
Oh, the Barbie song?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. Just like that.
They have to lip sync for their life. Shantae, you stay, and that's basically how it goes on set for those kinds of projects.
So
All the preference there, yeah.
so were you, I know you said like when you first scored a student film is when it kind of clicked that you really liked this.
Mhm.
Did it just happen to be more of the collaborative aspect of filmmaking that you enjoyed, or were you like a big movie buff growing up and you always thought in the back of your mind that that would be something you were interested in doing, or is it purely the idea of like this, I don't have to be the center of attention here, I'm more a complement to an overall piece that intrigued you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how when you ask a question so far back, it's hard to answer it honestly because there's the reasons you did it in real time, right, in the moment, and then there's the reasons teleologically from today. Looking back, I look back and say, oh well, that wasn't the reason at all. So, in the moment, I think I was just enjoying responding to something else, like getting a prompt from the movie, even if it's just the color and the camera movement, like those are prompting you to respond. Whereas if you and a blank page, you have to prompt everything, and that becomes a little tiring. Um, and maybe I'm just not as inspired as these great composers throughout history that are able to do that. But for me, I was drawing inspiration from something else, and that was hugely exciting. But when I look back from where I'm sitting today, I mean, I just loved movies more than I loved music, and I wasn't being honest about that, right? So if I was being honest, I probably would have switched paths in high school if I knew that was even a possibility to work in film. it might have been a writer, you know, like it might have been a totally different life for me, because that is what I'm interested in. You know, I'm obsessing over director interviews and like podcasts about writing and directing. Like these are the things I'm really, really interested in. And so I think what it was is I had all those interests dormant in me. And then I got to use my skill in music to actually work on a movie. And it clicked that way that, well, I'm making movies. This is cooler than music to me. Like, you know, music has its own beautiful language that isn't literal. It isn't about a message. It just is what it is. And the beauty comes from inherently how it sounds. But in a movie, I mean, you can change your entire philosophy on life from a movie. And that is just such an incredible thing. So, I mean, I think those experiences, the movies that shaped my life, informed me on like how meaningful film can be. And I wanted to be a part of that because it can really change people. In a way, music it can feed your soul, but it doesn't change your outlook on everything. At least for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to like rack my brain to see if I fully agree with you or not on that.
Yeah, and everyone I think has their own answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on the film side for sure. I'm just trying to think of like, has there been a piece of music that has changed my path in life? I think generally what you're saying, I agree with. I think the difference is more, like you said, music isn't literal, and music becomes more a piece of who you are, maybe, than resulting in a change of who you are, how you think, or how you behave necessarily. Like, I'm obsessed right now. I go through phases where I just become obsessed with certain songs, and they just become the only thing I want to
Yeah.
do is listen to that song. And currently it's Silver Spring by Fleetwood Mac. And
I've been through that phase.
yeah, and it's just
A long
like
time ago
that,
for me, but yeah.
that's like that's just like the soundtrack to my life. So everything that I'm doing currently is through the lens of that piece of music. But you're right, it's not necessarily like, it's not giving me an
It's
epiphany.
spiritual.
Yeah, it's more just like guiding me through.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had the most jubilant, incredible experiences listening to music. I mean, that's the closest thing to doing drugs that you can do. But I don't think any piece of music has gotten someone to accept gay marriage, but movies have done that, right? Like, there's literally like tectonic shifts in the way you think about an issue, or you know, it frames everything differently in a movie because stories are so inherently powerful, and they always have been. So and plus they get to use music, right? So you get to actually use music and all the power that that has in telling a story. And that was just, I mean, to me, they magnify each other. It's like you know, multiplication, not addition. Like how much more powerful it is to me.
But how do you feel, this is kind of a sidebar question, but since you brought up the emotions of it, how do you feel, or what do you think about a common, uh maybe a critique or a saying about like music in film as manipulation? Like there are a lot of thoughts about that. Like, you know, people will talk about certain filmmakers who really like to swell up a score when a sad music is going on and almost like manipulating the audience to feel a certain way. Um, and I know there's some pushback on that. And I know there are audiences who don't necessarily like that. I think in general, from the work you and I have done together, I think your music works really well because it is so complementary without being overbearing. I personally love it when a director is trying to manipulate the shit out of me. I'm like, that's what I'm here to see. Like, I
Yeah.
want to feel things. And if you're able to pull that out of me, like, good on you. You did it. You did your job. But what is your kind of like artistic belief when it comes to that idea?
Yeah, I think filmmaking is manipulation.
Yeah.
That is what a director is doing, is they're a magician, they're deceiving you, right? So they're using tricks to manipulate your emotions for sure. But when a score is working, it can work really on two levels well. I can either be supporting the text of the movie, so the words that they're saying are being supported directly by the music. So if someone is saying, you know, I've never been happier, and the music is also spiritually telling you this person has never been happier, right? That can work, but it can also backfire, because if the music is actually stepping into that territory stronger than the text itself, then everyone thinks it's corny immediately. It's overstepping, you know. But then there's the even more subversive use of music, which is it's the subtext. So someone can say, "I've never been happier," but the music tells you they're about to kill themselves in the next scene. And when someone, now with that context, you look at the words and it's, "I've never been happier," and it shatters you, right? Because we've all known people that say everything's okay when they're really crumbling inside. And that's something that you can't really get from the text alone. You get it from these other emotional layers in music. So, I mean, the ultimate is really when you're giving them the subtext, not just supporting the text and like hat on a hat, but you're actually giving it a different angle and different layer.
Yeah, I like that response. That's really enlightening. I want to go back to you.
Wait, can I ask a question?
No,
Yeah.
I want to go back to you.
So
Okay.
I feel like sometimes this is just a thought, not necessarily a question, but it seems like sometimes the best music scores are when you like don't even really know. Is that a crazy thing to say or no?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I mean. I think when I say that it can't overstep, right? If it oversteps, you really notice it.
Yeah.
And there's scores that I can think of that overstepped. If you guys have seen Leave the World Behind.
Yeah.
Why not Leave the World Behind? I'm crazy. May December.
I haven't seen that.
I have seen May December.
The music, it is supporting the text, but so strongly that it becomes distracting. Now you can love it. You can love what that does, but you start to notice it, right? It's no longer invisible.
Well, it
So
sort of seems like in that case, it's sort of like you either don't even really know the music's there and that's like such a supporting role, or it could be that the music becomes its own like character, like
mhm.
Harry Potter, for instance. Like
Yeah.
that music doesn't just blend in. You're like, ah, here's my epic kind of Harry Potter moment. And it's sort of, that would be interesting, I would think, to make that choice as a composer of sort of like, how do you want it to weave in? Do you want it to be noticeable? Do you want people to not even really think about it being there? Super interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's all very mysterious what we're doing. I mean, we're literally just vibrating air to make music. We're vibrating air at different frequencies. So, I mean, if you understand perfectly why music works the way it does, I mean, I'd pay $1 million to hear what the truth of it is, because no one really knows. We have theories, and that's why there's such a thing as music theory. It's not music facts, because we don't really understand why it does this to people. But that's why I like what I do. Is like it's like alchemy. You don't really understand the forces that you're working with, but you know when it works and you know when it doesn't, and you're just searching for like a human reaction.
How often do you send something in and the director's like, okay, that wasn't what I was expecting, but I think it like makes it better, versus that wasn't what I was expecting and I don't like it?
I mean, I think it just depends totally on the person you're working with. If you have a lot of trust with the person you're working with, and let's say you worked with them before, or at least you know them, or sometimes people just have a very trusting spirit. I've worked with people that just right away want to know what you want to do, and they don't want to force their idea onto you. So in situations like that, I mean, someone can tell me, "I don't know that I like this, but can we do a little bit more? Can we try this out in another scene?" And then maybe I'll know, right? And that's actually, that requires a lot of trust, because at a certain level you're understanding that you could get fired at any moment, so you don't want to disappoint anyone. But if you don't push the vision of the director, if they're asking for you to push it and you don't give them that, you'll get fired anyway. So because of that, it's cool when you get someone who's trusting and they want to see whether they'll start to like it, because it's so different from what they imagined. But I would say 90% of the time, people have a pretty clear vision of what they want, and you're trying to surprise them in small ways along the way, even if you're trying to deliver on what they asked for.
When someone puts in an order, are they like, I want it to be like this other film, or I want it to be like, what kind of direction did they give you?
Yeah, so that brings up this topic of the temp score, the temporary score that the editor puts into the movie, usually from other movies, right? So Harry Potter, for instance, if someone's making a magic related movie, they might throw John Williams' Harry Potter music into it, and that's the temp score. So you can't literally duplicate it, or else that's copyright infringement. So some people have different philosophies on this. Like, do we want to get the essence of this temp score, or do we want to get as close as we can? Because it's almost, we want to specifically evoke certain pieces. I've done parody videos, and they really want to get very close to the temp. Now, the danger is if you're not making a parody and you get too close to a very specific temp score. I mean, I've seen so many movies where I'm like, oh, I know what the temp score for this was. And that's very limiting. You know, no one wants to be put in that sort of a box. That's the equivalent, which no one really does, I hope. But I think the equivalent would be if you talk to an actor and you said, look at this scene from Walking Phoenix in The Master. I want you to do that in this scene. I mean, that'd be pretty limiting and almost insulting to the actor. So, I mean, people, they normalize it with musicians, which I don't really agree with. But that is what you're doing, is you're giving them a line reading, right? Which actors notoriously, they hate line readings. So yeah, temp scores are a part of our world, but it's not always welcomed.
I think I'm going back to what you were saying about like the iconic Harry Potter music. And I was thinking of like the Imperial March, the Darth Vader theme. Whenever he shows up on screen, you hear the dun 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 dun. And I think like I was trying to think of why that works so well, like a piece of music that becomes a part of a character on screen. And every example I was trying to think of are franchises like Darth Vader, Harry Potter, Indiana Jones.
You know, the Home Alone music.
Yeah, the Home Alone music is great.
Yeah.
All John Williams.
All John Williams, literally all John Williams. You know, it's funny. I used to work at I used to manage a post-production sound mixing stage, and we were mixing the Paul Thomas Anderson movie Phantom Thread there. So PTA would show up every day. He's my favorite filmmaker in the world, so it was really hard not to geek out. And one day, Rian Johnson, who was that was the year that his Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi, came out. So they were both in post-production at the same time. And so he came to the stage once to visit PTA and just, you know, shoot the shit with him or whatever. And so Rian Johnson knocks on the door. I bring him in, bring him to the stage where PTA is. And obviously I'm going to eavesdrop as much as I can, because these are two like living legends working at the top of their game. Huge Last Jedi fan, by the way, for all the haters. Screw you. That's like the best Star Wars movie since Empire. But regardless, so they go and sit down and they start talking. And all they want to talk about is John Williams. Like that's all they care about. It's talking about John Williams. Like PTA is just geeking out over the fact that Rian Johnson is directing a movie that John Williams is scoring. He wants to know everything. Rian Johnson just over the moon. Like you just don't know what it's like until you're in the room with that guy. Like he's a master. And it's so true. Like he is like the sound of classical Hollywood, that guy. Like he and there are so many imitators and knockoffs who try to duplicate what he's been able to do, bringing music, not just as a musician, but specifically bringing music into the movies. I feel like he is the sound of Hollywood for all those reasons. It's just crazy.
Yeah, he's the reason why most people that are film composers decide they want to be a film composer. I mean, it's not overstating it. And, you know, speaking of temp score though, I'm pretty sure all of his movies had temp score. The difference is they were symphonic works or operas. They were these incredibly sophisticated pieces of music. Now, the main theme for Star Wars, the temp score is pretty clear what it was. It's a piece by Korngold, who's the John Williams of an earlier era, who's incredible. And one of his pieces starts almost the same way. I don't know if you can ever source the audio and put it into this podcast, but the similarities between his theme and Korngold's theme are pretty, astounding. But it's not even close to Star Wars. So it's about elevating the inspirations, right? So the director might have an idea, but you have to make that feel so at home with this particular story and have it be divorced from its original context. Like if it was part of an opera, okay, we're not going to even think about the opera when we hear this though, because we're twisting it and manipulating it so it feels truly original. So yeah, even John Williams had to deal with this. Last little bit on him though, because it's so crazy. He's, I think, the only working composer that works off of pencil and paper. He doesn't touch
How
the
old
computer.
is he?
He's 90, I think.
Sounds right to me. He's been at it for so long, and what's inspiring too that I didn't realize until going to USC and learning about the history of film music is that he was known as Johnny Williams for so long until he's, I think, 35 or so. And he was just doing like TV music and radio plays. Like he hadn't made it yet, really, until he was close to 40. And that's inspiring to anyone who's going out and hustling to do this, because it'll take you 10 years until you start doing big films. I mean, even John Williams wasn't an exception to that, right? So yeah, he's everyone's greatest inspiration, whether even if you're into Trent Reznor and Disaster Piece and all these modern film composers. I mean, at the heart of a great film score, like you got to study John Williams.
Think about how much of a bomb Home Alone could have been if the music just sucked, or if it was like early 90s, like stupid Christmas music versus this like what's now like Somewhere in My Window or whatever. These are songs that have become like synonymous with Christmas, which really, I feel like, made that such a classic versus if it had just been like, movie could have just blown.
Steven Spielberg even said he saved Jaws from doing the score that he did, because the mechanical shark that they were using didn't work very well, and it wouldn't have been scary unless he had the Jaws theme. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like you asked originally, like when do people get brought into the process? And another way of answering it is you get brought in once the filmmakers know what problems the movie has, right? Because no matter how ambitious a filmmaker is, it's not going to be perfect. No one is really 100% satisfied with what they got on set. And so it's your job to address those things, right? And cynically, some people say you're there to fix the bad acting or you're there to fix some problem. But I mean, in most of the experiences I've had, there's been really quality work all the way around, and you're just trying to elevate it. So, but yeah, you're brought in once the filmmaker knows what the issues are. That's another way of looking at
it. You're 100% right. Sorry, Blaine, go ahead.
Have you seen the scene in The Holiday, the blockbuster scene?
With Jack Black? Yeah, isn't he going on and on about John Williams in that scene?
He just like brings up movies and then sings the score to it. It's a great scene. Yeah, might be my favorite scene ever. I love Jack Black.
Watch it in 11 months when it's Christmas season again. We can't do it now.
I missed it this Christmas, and I might turn it on tonight.
There you go. Like I said at the beginning before Alex hopped on, it's January 17th when we're recording this. You cannot say Happy New Year anymore. It's too late. But if you want to continue to say Merry Christmas, I'm fine with it, because that's a holiday I like. New Year's, I don't give a shit about. But if you want to say Merry Christmas until March, go for it. I don't care. But that's just me. I wanted to talk about what Alex was just saying about when the director needs help, because I just produced this anthology feature of short films that are going to be compiled into a feature, all different directors on each project. And so they're all putting in their cuts right now. And two of them specifically just this week, I was giving notes for. And most of the notes are like, oh yeah, that's correctable, or we don't have that footage, whatever. And then two different projects specifically I gave a note to, and their response was, well, that'll be fine once the score comes in. Like, don't worry about it. Once the score is there, it'll make sense. I'm like, okay, all right, if you insist. But it's so true. Like the moments that can seem dull or boring, or where it's kind of like you're in an in-between moment in the movie. I feel like that's when the score really has the chance to shine and take over for a few seconds before you get back into
Mhm.
the meat of it, of the story or the characters or whatever.
I agree.
So I know you have a hard out. I don't want to keep you too long, but I wanted to talk about this feature film that you composed. It had a premiere last year at South by Southwest. For people listening who don't know, South by Southwest is a major festival. It does film, does music, hosts podcasts, live podcast shows, everything. One of the biggest festivals in the world, which is a great accomplishment to get into that festival to begin with. But on top of that, I know IGN Online just released the trailer, which we'll link to in the show notes for people to watch. It's a really delightful trailer. And it's getting a theatrical run in February of this year. So A, congratulations on that. That's a huge deal.
Oh,
And
thanks.
B, tell us a little bit about the movie.
Yeah, it's called Molli and Max in the future. And the pitch for it was great. The director just told me it's a mix of When Harry Met Sally meets Rick and Morty. And it's exactly that. I mean, it's a classic, well-written and structured romantic comedy, but it's zany and just the sense of humor that we have today that works so well in Rick and Morty and the existentialism that's kind of pumped into it. He found a way to make a feature film out of that with two amazing actors. Um, Zosha Mamet is the lead actress. She just destroyed it. She's from Girls. I love her in that show.
Me too.
And the male lead is Ari Anthari, and he was at SNL for a year and did some amazing sketches. And then this is his first movie, his first time acting, really. But they were just incredibly charming. And so when I got the chance to meet the director, he had already completed the film. He was looking for a composer, but he honestly had already he narrowed it down to two or three other composers. And so when I was willing to audition for it and write a demo, he just let me know, very courteous, like, we're probably going to go with someone else, but if you want to, just don't take too much time with it because chances are we're going to go with the people that we know and have already met with, which I appreciate. But I still took it as a challenge. And I wrote a demo that was two pieces of music, very different styles of music. One was slow and sort of like a ballad, a jazz ballad, because it was a jazz score that he needed. And the second one was upbeat, sort of like gypsy jazz. If you ever heard of Django Reinhardt, it's sort of that vibe.
Oh yeah.
And so in one day, I wrote both of those and reached out to friends that I had back in Houston. The same people I'd been gigging with as a jazz musician before I moved out to LA. They recorded remotely, guitar, saxophone, violin, really made it something. And so 2 days after I reached out to him initially, I sent him the demos, and he's like, "All right, you got it." So it was really really fun to get onto the project because the script was so incredibly good. I mean, rarely can you tell from a script that something's going to be legitimately funny, and I was just laughing out loud reading it. So I knew when you have talented people like Zosha Mamet, it's going to be really really good. And it was it was a fast paced process because I only had 2 weeks to score the whole thing. And for reference, usually I have like 2 months. And so that, I mean, it was like jam packed, like every day, just like an Olympic sprint. So it was really fun to do. But it also, what I loved about it was I had no chance to second guess myself. There's no writer's block. Like you got to go. So it made you really trust your instincts. And if something sticks, you just ran with it. And so it's probably the most fun I've ever had working on a score. Not only because it was fast paced and I liked that, I'm a psycho for that, but it was also being able to improvise and being able to work my jazz roots into something. And it's really the first time I've been able to do that in a major way. So it was just a pleasure to work on.
And when does it come out for the people who want to go watch it?
Yeah, it's a romantic comedy, like I said. So they timed it near Valentine's Day. It'll be February 9th. So it'll be in over 100 theaters across the country. Still waiting for the specific list to see which AMC it'll be near you, but definitely be on the lookout for it. It's a treasure of a movie, and the director is amazing. But also his wife, the editor of the movie, is the editor of The Bear, and she's won 2 Emmys. So I mean, it's just really smart and well made.
We love The Bear.
Well,
That is for
It's
sure.
incredible. Such
The
a
Bear.
good show.
The Bear family is good family. I had an interview right before this not an interview, a meeting with an actor and a director just to get like a vibe check between them, which went really well. And we were talking about crowdfunding and stuff, and I mentioned that I had just watched an interview with Io Debery from The Bear,
Oh, yeah.
and she just won a Golden Globe, a Critics' Choice Award, and an Emmy all within a week.
Yeah.
And an interviewer asked her, like, so you're on this like wave of success, like you're the new it girl in Hollywood. Do you feel like you finally made it? Like you're here, you're in Hollywood, you're a big talent. And her response was like, well, I'm still renting. So
Yeah. I love
like
her.
that's just the reality of it, I guess. But kudos to you and congratulations on that. Just scoring a feature is really exciting. To get it in the theaters is kind of impossible at this point, especially for smaller movies. So I think it's great. And I think it obviously speaks to the quality of what the movie will be. So everyone, please go to your local theater and check out Molly and Max in the future, because I'm sure it's a delight. Before you go, last thing, because this is the thesis of our podcast. Our general ideas, talking to creative people, talking about their work, what excites them, obviously, because if you work in a creative field, you most likely have a passion for that. But with any job, burnout plays a part. So have you ever experienced burnout in your professional life as a composer? And if so, have you learned any tricks or do you have any tools to help you combat that?
Yeah, I think I haven't experienced true burnout. I've seen people who have, and so I'm not going to overstate it and say that I've really gone through that, because burnout to me means that you really, the thing that tickled you somewhere deep down when you started doing it, it just doesn't, you don't feel that way anymore, right? Like there's a, if you saw Maestro, there's a line in that movie that's pretty similar. It's like if you don't, if somewhere doesn't live in you, then you can't make music. And yeah, I think I've never lost that part of it. But with every project, you can get to the point where you've been working on it. You're basically facing rejection again and again and again. If something isn't working, you have to confront your own insecurities, right? And so you can get burnout within one project. But to me, the way to overcome that is, first off, before you ever accept the project, make sure you're really in love with what the story is and what the director wants to do with it. Because if you just love that thing and the director is staying true to what they want to do and you're just falling short, well, that's actually easier to get over. That's just self-improvement. But if you decided to do a project because of, you know, the money or a connection that you're going to make and there's really no attraction to the material, that's how you get stuck in these burnout phases where you just really dread going to work on that project. And so, you know, over the years, I've just accepted less of those projects. You know, I want to feel that if I had to do this for 5 months, if it dragged on for quite a while, I would still be wanting to go back to it. So it's not helpful for anyone who's currently experiencing it, but I think it's important to talk about how to preemptively avoid it. Yeah, to me, you have to fall in love with it, and you have to feel like it's really worthwhile, because then you'll always find another reason to go back to it, go back to the grind.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to something we've discussed on this podcast before, which is the three elements to accepting work, and at least two of them need to be fulfilled. And I think they were good people, good money, and a good project. Like if you have two
Good
of those
hang.
three, good
Well,
good
I'm
people meaning a good
but
hang.
I
Yeah,
like to put in the good hang.
a good hang. So like if
Yeah,
you know
Good
you're
hang.
working with good people and having a fun time, if you know the project pays well, and if you really love the project. If you have two of those, one of those three is not enough. But
yeah,
if you can make sure every project has at least two, ideally all three, but at least two of those three, I think to what you're saying, Alex, that will help in advance preempt any potential burnout or lack of love or falling out of love with a project.
yeah. And one thing it came to me as you were talking. The thing that I know, because I've known Tom for a while, that he still loves movies. He watches movies, and it sounds stupid to say it, but that's not a given. I mean, I've worked with a lot of great professionals in different sectors of the film industry. That when I ask them, dude, what do you like this year? Like, what's your favorite movie? Like, oh, I don't really watch anything. I didn't go to the theaters. And I think that's the biggest thing. The number one thing for me in the film world is you got to be watching things, and even if it's not even your favorite movie, you're responding to it, right? That there's something you didn't like about it. You're talking to people about what you didn't like about it, or hopefully what you loved about the movie you just saw. So, like, really engaging with what's happening now in theaters is like the number one thing for me, which is why I recommend AMC A List. I don't know if you're sponsored by them, but
It should
you
be.
just get to go see like 6 movies, or as many movies as you basically want to see in a month. I mean, I've seen 50 movies that came out last year, and it's the most movies I've ever seen in a year, and I'm more inspired than ever. So it's just find ways to see movies, even if you're poor, like me. It's just try to find a way to see as much as you can and stay engaged.
Yeah, I mean, I went and saw The Color Purple last night for that very reason. Had the A-list, had nothing to do. I'm like, I want to go to a movie. Let's go see The Color Purple. Music is great in that, by the way. I don't know if you ever saw the stage performance or the movie or not, but music, top notch.
Yeah.
I took the kids over Christmas to see Trolls World Tour and Migration. 10 out of 10, both of them. Big fan.
Really?
Yeah, love them.
I don't know if you see those.
Yeah, you gotta go see some movies together.
Yeah, we should definitely. Because I also have the A-list and have saved, I mean, literally thousands of dollars. I mean, I remember the first month I bought A-list back when it was like 22 a month. I made a point to see as many movies in that first month as possible and then calculate like what the ticket cost would have been versus my $22 a month membership. And I would have spent something like $300 in tickets that month if I didn't have that A-list membership.
Do you buy popcorn?
I always buy at least a large fountain drink and I get sparkling water.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll get food. Sometimes.
Is it popcorn or are you getting a candy? What are
I
you?
don't like popcorn really.
All
Like
right.
I'll eat it if it's around me, but I'm more like peanut M&Ms or like some like non-chocolatey candy like Sour Patch Kids.
Sour Patch Kids are great.
My all-time favorite like movie candy that I haven't seen in like 10 years. Butterfinger BBs. Remember those?
Mm.
Yeah.
Where did those go?
This is a little inside baseball because it's not a national change, but the ArcLight theaters, rest in peace. They were mainly in Los Angeles, but there are a few sprinkled throughout the country. They closed during the pandemic, but they used to have their own caramel popcorn.
Mm.
And that is the GOAT of movie theater snacks, specifically the ArcLight version of caramel popcorn. If I could find the distributor and just buy it by the ton, I 100% would. Because that was a theater. If I was going to the ArcLight, I was getting 2 tubs of caramel popcorn, one to eat in the theater and one to put in my pantry.
I had a movie at South by Southwest this past time too. I was in a movie and I really like that they show the movies in the old theaters.
Yeah.
It was very cool to like be in an old theater and then your movies up there. And then we also did the Dallas Film Festival, I think, and it was very cool. I don't know, it was cool seeing. It wasn't just an AMC, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I love that part. In LA, the biggest part of being in LA and not getting beat by it and burnt out is like going to theaters that are in LA. I mean, there's some cool places like the Arrow in Santa Monica. End up going there a lot. Just you're kind of engaging with theatrical experiences. And as corny as it sounds to some people, I mean, it changes the way you watch a movie when you're around people in this sort of primitive way. Like the lights are off. The way Nicole Kidman describes it is so true.
It is. It's so true.
Totally.
I love that people still applaud for that.
Yeah.
When that shows up. I love it. I feel like I think I have undiagnosed ADD for sure. And when I'm trying to watch a movie at home, if it's not immediately grabbing me, I'm on my phone. I'm looking at Instagram. But if I go to the theater, I know like phone's off. I'm 100% engaged. And even if it's I get called a movie whore a lot because I like almost everything I watch. But it's because I go to the theater so much. And there's just something about that experience that is so magical and enjoyable of like, this is the thing you are here to do. It is tailored to your enjoyment. Like the sound is good. The projection levels are good. AMCs can dip in quality a lot. But in general, like it's a good experience. Everyone's quiet and focused and engaged on it, and it's just overwhelming you with that image and that sound. It's just like there's nothing like it in the world.
Yeah.
It's the greatest.
And I think there's something like fundamental to like movies are storytelling, and in some weird way, we're all just sitting around a fire sharing stories when we watch a movie, and it's the equivalent as if a wise storyteller in your village was telling the story, and you're distracted the entire time talking to your friend. It's disrespectful. Like there's someone wise telling you something. I think when you have a really good movie, implicitly it's because there's something wise in there, and there's something, you know, that's relevant to you, and that you should kind of sit down, shut up for a bit, and just watch something and forget that you're a person and just, you know, engage with the story itself. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big stickler for putting your phone away even when you're at home. Like when I do it myself, I make sure Liz calls me out. I'm looking at my phone because you're shorting yourself on an experience that you
Yeah.
can't get back. So,
I
yeah.
am also that cop in movies. If anyone listening is ever in a movie theater with me and you're on your phone, I will talk to you. I will go up to you and tell you to put your phone away because it is
I appreciate you.
100%. I am that person. I just did it the other day to a bunch of like 14-year-old girls, and they were legitimately scared of me.
Was it Wonka?
Like it was Wonka. I swear to God, it was at a screening of Wonka, which by the way is delightful.
How is Timothy Chalamet dating that Kardashian?
I don't know. Who knows? Who cares?
That's what they were probably talking about in the theater.
Yeah,
Probably so. He's so little.
he is very little, but he's good in Wonka, and Wonka is so enjoyable, especially on a big screen. Like I was blown away. I was expecting less than nothing from that movie. I thought
Yeah.
it was a terrible idea. The trailers didn't do anything for me. I was expecting it to be garbage, but it's great. Director of Paddington 2. I should have never doubted him. Of course, the guy's gonna make a good movie. You know?
Yeah.
Put that on your top 10 one year.
Paddington 2?
Yeah.
That was like my number one the year it came out.
Okay. Well, I knew it was on your top 10.
Yeah.
Wonka's close for last year to my top 10. If it isn't in my top 10, it's close.
And you know, that's kind of what I'm hoping is with Molly and Max in the future, people just will see it on their AMC app and go to see it like, oh, I've heard nothing about it, but let me watch this thing, and it could be their favorite movie of the year. I mean, Theater Camp is the exact same thing for me this year. I watched it knowing nothing, hadn't even watched a preview. Fucking hilarious, and you know, I think that's what I'm excited about is that people will see Molly and Max in the future without me having to beg them to go see it. They'll just go watch it, and that's a first for me. You know, usually you're getting all your friends and your family to go support you, but it's cool for once just to be able to casually have someone tell you about a movie. Say, oh yeah, by the way, worked on that, and director is amazing and good guys all around. So yeah, hope you guys get to go see it. Hopefully it's at the AMC's so we can go in Entourage.
Yeah, it'll definitely be in LA. Hopefully, it should be in Atlanta as well. If it's in over 100 theaters, it'll definitely be in all the big cities. So,
Yeah.
anyway, if you're within 2 hours driving of a major metropolitan area in the United States, Valentine's Day with your partner, even if you're alone, take your stuffed animal, go see Molly and Max in the future. It'll be a delight.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming, Alex. It was a joy to talk to you, man. I'll hit you up soon.
All right, guys. Peace.
Bye. Thank you again to Alex Winkler for that wonderful chat. It was very enlightening. How'd you like it, Point?
I liked it. I like that his last name is Winkler too, kind of like the Fonz.
Oh yeah, Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler.
I never, I've known him for a few years. I never made that connection.
First thing I thought about.
Maybe he's a distant relative or something.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool. I worked with a guy last month, a camera person, whose last name was Falcon. And I thought that was super cool. Yeah. Falcon.
You just go by Falcon.
That's what I would do if I was him. But then again, my last name's Bond, and everyone tells me like, "You should go by James Bond." I'm like, all right, shut up. Anyway, thank you again to Alex.
You utilize Bond. I feel you like it. You like to throw it around some.
The last name?
Yeah, you're like Tom
When
Bond.
have I ever thrown it around?
Well, Tom Bond.
It's not even in like my social media handles. Yeah, you're full of shit. I think you're thinking of a different friend named Bond.
Only
Maybe
got the one.
maybe my sister. Again, everyone will throw a link to the trailer. I'm gonna try to find that piece of music he was talking about too. That was kind of the precursor for Star Wars. We'll see if we can find the link to
Don't
that.
get us sued.
Um,
Don't get us sued.
no, I mean, if it's old enough, it's public domain, so it's fine. And it's just a link. We're not actually gonna play it. But we'll throw the trailer to Molli and Max in the show notes. You should definitely watch it. I watched it. It's really enjoyable. Seems like it's going to be a really fun movie. And yeah, we will be back soon with another guest on Move Me Brightly. Thanks, everybody.